This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So again, this is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole again and again and again. It's like the Mad World song. This is Zach. I'm here with Zach Louie and Jason Caldwell and myself, Andrieh. You know us. You either love us, you hate us, maybe both at the same time some days. But we're talking about curse word today. We're definitely talking about curse word. And I felt like we were discussing before my technological fail that you need to be able to welcome pain, suffering, depression, anger, all those things into your house and laugh with them. Otherwise, you cannot do curse work. This might as well be the closest to a Taoist class, Taoist deeper down you're ever going to hear. Fundamentally, this is where Taoism separates from Buddhism, where Taoism assumes that those are just experiences that have no more or less value than happiness and joy. And the reason that you have to be able to do that is if you can't accept those into your life, you can't accept those within yourself, you cannot do curse work. Okay, what's that meme now? Prove me wrong. Wait, hold on. Prove me wrong.
Or change your mind?
Or change my mind. What do you guys think? You've done your fair of curse work.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of weird, man, because darkness, despair, it's kind of like, I like that stuff a little bit too much.
And we'll talk about that too. That's an important point. That really is kind of the bad side of this. So, first we have to discuss karma, because everyone does curses, and there's some, I don't want to say disreputable, but they are, in my opinion, what would you guys say, disreputable, maybe dishonest authors who will basically say they never do curse work. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. I guarantee it's a lie. You're not in the public eye and not doing curses. Should I get my sunglasses? Prove me wrong again?
Or you can just wear them for most of the show.
Hey, first off, I think that's very true. You're not a public figure, not doing curses.
Right, because you need to defend yourself. And people are not rational. And people online, the more people you actually have following you, the more haters you actually have, and they will throw curses at you. Now, the idea that as a public figure you have blanket immunity is not true. Some of those curses, unless you have good spiritual defenses, can get through. Now, most of the time, those curses do not get through to me unless it's an extra dimensional spiritual entity of great evil or some shit like that. I don't know. Sometimes they can be annoying, like a mosquito. I think the same is true for you, Jason, at this point. Same is true with you, Zach. But when you're first starting out as a public figure, you have to learn how to defend yourself. But nowadays, when we're talking about envy and stupidity, well, what has COVID done to people? Are people operating at a higher plane of existence anymore? I don't think so. And in fact, I think that what I said in a lot of ways last time we had the show was that, then it seemed like, okay, well, we're in this for long haul. We are. It's worse because people are talking about opening up things again. I really think that makes it worse, because the second level of this is going to be much more despair and terror. And people were already cognitively kind of shutting down already, where they couldn't handle things. So the whole environment is turning entropic. And if you think that's not true, there's 22, what is it? Is it more now than 22 unemployment?
It's pushing up to 30%, I think.
Really? 30% unemployment?
It's starting to push up toward 30%.
There's no way there's 100 million people unemployed yet. It might be up to 25 million, maybe 30 million. That's closer to 10%. Not if there was 33% of the people unemployed, we need to get guns.
What was the Great Depression levels? Because I hear we're right about there.
Great Depression was around, I think, 15 to 20%.
Okay. Well, okay, so I'm inflating that a bit. Sorry.
Yeah, if we were at 33%, that literally is Argentina. We literally all need to get guns, except for Zach, who's in Canada.
Yep.
We actually do have guns, even those of us who don't have guns. And curse work is our gun in a lot of ways. Curse work is definitely our gun. And if your company is still solvent, I'll be honest, I think you should be doing bindings on your boss's boss, and your boss's boss right now, so you keep your job. I have.
Mm-hmm. So have I.
Do you still have your job?
Oh, yes. It's a double-edged sword, though, I'll be honest, because I'm still going to a physical location every day, so I'm putting myself in some danger. I'm putting my family in some danger, so it's kind of scary.
I consider myself slightly better magician than Jason because I just work from home. Although that binding was a double-edged sword because now I have more work. So yeah, people just keep throwing stuff on me. They're not going to fire me, but I'm gainfully employed. Mm-hmm. They're paying attention. They're definitely giving me work, keeping me working, but they're paying attention. They're definitely giving me more work. Double-edged sword. The thing is now, for a couple weeks, I feel like we're going to be out of this terror land, but trust me, I don't believe people are done with being horribly terrified, especially when the COVID starts going up again, because no one's social distancing and they're going to start removing the restrictions. I think, again, you'll see that happening. And the thing is when you're in a time of social change, magic works better. And entropic magic, as far as I'm concerned, always works better. It's easier to curse people than bless them. Nobody wants to admit that. The New Age community wants to kind of turn a blind towards that because curses are verboten. The occult community is trying to be proto-Christian almost in some cases, which is, I don't get it. Our forefathers, if you want to take a purely pagan approach to most of the European things, if you're rejecting Christianity, and you're going back to the witchcraft that used to be there. It was wild. It was uncontrolled. It wasn't safe. Witches cursed other shamans and other villages all the time, like to make sure their village was okay. Or witches would curse people who annoyed them. You know, it wasn't necessarily so more moral as it is now.
Well, and also you bring up the whole idea of the historicity and the famous people that say that they're against curse work, but they're probably doing it. I look at the flip side. I've never been to a pagan event that wasn't a shit show of people throwing curses back and forth that are nothing but peons.
Yep.
Not supposed to say the quiet part outside, Jason, but okay. You know, whatever. You know, I don't know they're nothing but peons, but they are throwing curses back and forth at each other. I've never been at an event that's not true. And all of these religions, basically, the formalized Wicca, the formalized, even Ifa, Santeria. Now, Voodoo does actually say, no, if your family's at risk, you curse somebody. You call up Micaiah and you curse them. Or you call up the dead and you curse them outright. Like, do not. But then Hades got a phrase, good is rare. Good is rare. That's probably a phrase for America right now, in a lot of times. And not so much Canada, but probably good is rare. You know, But all of these different places do actually say you're not supposed to do this. And the reason they say not to do this is we've been infected with this idea of karma. And I really think it's an infection because the Hindu version of karma doesn't look like anything like what we have in the West. It's like the West is like some skyfather sends his angels down to kick your ass. Like if you do the slightest magical misdeed, most of the time that never happens. In fact, I would tell everyone listening, and I'm sure other authors might listen and take offense to this. You can do curse work with no obvious instant consequences if you have no guilt about it. You guys disagree? Wait, hold on a second. We got to do this, right? Prove me wrong.
I agree, but here's yeah. So let's. I want you to elaborate on the effects of those actions.
Well, I don't necessarily think they have any effects initially, but any magic you do is certainly going to have an effect on your Andrieh system. And this is where, so sure, I would basically do binding right off the bat on people. Bindings are probably the least, well, unless it's a glass jar binding or a nail jar binding, where you're like, move in the wrong way and your throat gets cut. That's basically what that binding's saying. But most of the time, what's a binding is basically you're trying to keep a person with certain predictable actions. When people are acting unpredictable, you still have to be okay with the energy of constraint, right? If you're not okay with the energy of constraint, how are you going to use it? There always potentially energy-wise could be some blowback, like you could miss, and then find yourself partially constrained for a night, if you miss that badly, okay, so that's like what, a couple hours in jail, you're going to freak out. Well, that's the energy of constraint. Right now, we know what the energy of constraint is, right? Because we're doing bindings, but, we're also in our houses because of COVID. That's literally constraint, right? So, can you be okay with it? Is that energy just an experience or not? The thing is, if you fight against that energy all the time, how are you going to use it? It's not usable to you. And that's what actually people do that aren't practiced in curse work, right? There's some people who can throw curses with very little problems. There's other people who throw curses and their life goes to hell because they can't welcome those different forces at the door and laugh with them. They're not just experiences. They're mortified of those energies, like the energy of constraint, mortified of death energies, mortified of pain energies, right? So how are you going to use and find those parts of yourself in a spell when you reject them outright? It can't happen. That's why curse work is actually harder, I think, than most. It's easier to get it to work, and it's harder to actually do it because you have to actually be able to find those parts of yourself, find the parts in the external universe, which in some energies that's easy, like terror right now is easy, or anxiety, that's still easy right now, but you still have to be able to find it with yourself and accept it. Like that is hard. People don't want to accept that they have pain. People don't even want to admit they're mad.
Well, we're talking some hard psychological bullshit, man. You got to really, really accept those things psychologically. You can't just say, oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. It's a process.
You have to be okay with that. Well, welcome to the great work of magic, right, Jason?
Well, I wouldn't say just psychologically you have to be okay. Emotionally, you have to be okay with it. That's a lot more difficult, actually.
Well, if you're separating psychologically as an intellectual construct and divorcing emotionality from psychology, I guess, maybe. I would say that psychologically kind of encompasses that. But you know what? For the sake of argument, it's true. You have to be emotionally okay with it. You have to be, if you're going to use fear, you have to be emotionally okay with being afraid. If you're going to use anger, you have to be emotionally okay with being angry. If you're going to use despair, which I do not recommend anyone use that one, even in curse work, you have to be emotionally okay with despair. That one's a tough one. Like, I would be hesitant to use despair. However, I wouldn't be so hesitant to use madness, which, again, if you're going to use madness, that's not an emotional state. That's a complex set of vectors that are a radically different mental state. You have to be okay with being mad for a little while, right?
My 2 cents would be don't do madness until you do hallucinogenics, but you might have a different opinion.
I wouldn't disagree with that, unless you really have a good handle on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You really understand what that state is, and it looks different, what the different states in that area is, and what that means, and how you get yourself back. That's really the key of what we're talking about, is how do you get back? Okay, so if you're in a state of anger, what do you do to not be angry? Like, how do you get control over it? Like, if you're in a state of fear, what do you do to get control of it? If you're in a state of rapid cognitive disruption where nothing makes sense, which is one definition of kind of insanity, like, how do you get back to even keel? You know, how do you find the pathways back? So if we go straight hardcore non-neo shamanism, hardcore Taoism, and then by that I don't mean book Taoism, which, I mean, Zach, would you like to go on a tirade over book Taoism right now? Or
I mean, I could go on forever for that shit. I mean, the book Taoist approach is very much philosophical and it's contemplative, which I would arguably say is a Buddhist influence, maybe even a Confucian influence, but actual Taoism is quite wild. Animals don't care if they kill each other. It's who's in the pecking order. If literally winter freezes things, it doesn't care. But everyone wants to put these moral principles to Taoism, which have no application. That's literally just, I would say, the influence and or poisoning of Confucianism in that realm.
it's not unlike what I think of witchcraft in America, in North America at least. It's been poisoned, not just by Wicca. Wicca was originally poisoned by Christianity. And that Christian moral structure of let God handle it is the opposite of curse work, right? Like, although, like, if you go to certain African American communities and you sit down with people who know how to pray the right way, you know, where they're basically doing conjure work, they certainly will ask God to intercede in an aggressive way towards enemies who are threatening them or their family, or people who just annoy them. They don't really have the Protestant restrictions on this that you see so prominent, and they are Protestant. It's a certain cultural Anglo-Saxon Protestant ethics code that actually kind of restricts Wiccans. And, you know, if you're going to say you're going to do curse work, you can't just let it happen without saying you have to be responsible for that. Obviously, you know, if you have some kind of guilt over the fact that you're doing curse work, I keep saying that, but I guarantee you what's going to happen is you're going to tear yourself apart. I mean, Jason, you said you like it a little too much sometimes. Maybe you could elaborate.
Darkness, despair. These are feelings that you can live with. I don't recommend it. And I'm kind of a darker personality that's prone to depression and prone to, you know, I don't deal with like anxiety and fear. I deal with just feeling dark and depressed, and it becomes part of my persona and I'm okay with it. Hey, I got to fight against those habits, right? But I know how to tap into it and get back out of it because I've dealt with it as part of my personality for years.
Would you like some black clothes? I can give you some black lipstick.
You already know I wear a lot of black, dude. Got some colors going on, right? New perspectives in life.
There you go. See? There you go. New perspectives. I think that's it in a nutshell. Like, you can't tap into stuff you can't necessarily actually accept. Constraint is the easy one. We can all understand constraint right now. I think binding should be trivial for most people if they can actually tap in. And we'll do some practical stuff right now. It's like the halfway mark in the show, right? So we do some practical stuff. Like bindings don't have to be overly complicated too. You don't need to do iambic pentameter like some of the Wiccan spells I've seen. Like you can literally grab a string and literally just make a poppet out of somebody. If you have some of their personal effects, that's easy. You get some of their hair, but their signature is good enough. Their picture is good enough. You can just keep wrapping it. And what you're imagining is, with all 5 of your senses and you're pushing the energy through, is that they're getting constrained. They can't do anything, right? Now, if you want to be, that's usually good enough if you're not skilled, right? Not doing anything from your perspective, if you don't want to get fired, is good enough. That constrains them in other areas. With some practice, you can actually just constrain them in different ways where you can conceptualize the string as constraining their ability to fire people right now. It doesn't always necessarily go so linearly either. They might very well intend to fire you and our superior says no. But usually it would change their behavior. And another simple way to do this is called it's like a paper spell. I forgot what it's called in Conjure. I just call it the paper spell, where you write their name down 9 times. You turn it, you write their name over the top of it, and then you write your intention around them, what you're buying them from doing. Same kind of thing. You're wrapping them, you know. Now we're skipping a whole bunch of steps here. You have to be able to get into a deep trance state. You have to be able to focus. You have to be able to meditate, which if you're in a compromised situation for yourself that you are unable to focus because of COVID, you need to get that shit under control first before you can project this, right? Even projecting this, even the best magician might be able to project this and do this. That's not the way I did my binding. I have a pact with a certain spirit named Payman, and I just asked him to take care of it for me, which he said, sure, I like you. You're not like everyone else in the trailer home. It was a Dead Milkman reference. See, there we go. Weird punk band said only I would get. Well, did anyone in the chat get that reference? Oh, yeah, Jeffrey. See? But if you aren't in a good state of mind, you can't do this. You like literally have to be able to ignore what the external situations is with that. Now, the external situation, energy, or constraint works in your favor because you have to personally ignore it. Your feelings or get past it, but you want them to get affected by it. You literally want to attract the vibe, maybe spirits and other things that are in the air of constraint to come to them. So you don't care that they get more affected by it, but you can't. Even with you doing the work for a period of time and then banishing correctly at the end of the ritual, you still might get affected by it. Like as in, it might not be so blatant, like, you know, it might be subtle, like you just get unnerved, you feel antsy because you can't leave the house, you're reflecting on this type of situation more and more. That's the energy being in your system, right? Like the energies around you got in your system a little, it's kind of like a bell, to use the classic hermetic idea. It's like you could kind of pick up on energy because you engaged it. You know, all you can do at that point is you got to just clear yourself out and realize, well, that's the situation. Or you can welcome it and say, well, that's COVID, so I get to stay home and barbecue more. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Although I can't get food from the grocery stores, but that's different. That's a different problem, right?
You got the grocery delivery service, right?
They don't have groceries anymore. It's really hard to get groceries from them.
Okay.
My wife is like sitting there planning it out. We never get everything on the list anymore. And we're talking like our list is like chicken and vegetables. So even if you go to a grocery store, they're like still not totally okay. Well, some of us were in Ohio, so yeah. I don't know, is groceries in Columbus a little better?
I haven't had any trouble getting anything. Now, toilet paper was a problem. I had to go to I had to go to Costco for toilet paper, but groceries been fine.
Okay.
Well, you did do that run for the 2-ply last time we talked.
Yeah, that was 3 different stores, so that's not just fine. That's kind of you pushed the envelope to get that toilet paper.
I pushed the envelope to get the toilet paper because people are stupid. If you know people that are hoarding toilet paper or going to protest because they want the economy to reopen, we'll be watching you people.
Damn.
But that being said, you know, it's like when people behave, life is better for everyone, right?
That's the thing. People weren't behaving before this. That's why you need curses, right? I mean, like if they were behaving before they were cognitively impaired, you wouldn't need curses. If everyone was perfectly rational, I mean, some people would actually do curses because it's fun for them. And that's what we also have to talk about. Like, I've kind of in my travels as a magician, I've met people who certainly like curses a lot. And I never see it end up well for them. It seems like it goes well for a while. They might even get what they want. I'm not going to name names, but it definitely seems to go real badly after a while. And you know what? The reason is I don't think it's karma at all. You know, even if you're purely a sociopath, you make mistakes, and unless you have a lot of power to start with, and we won't name any names, like generally speaking, it all falls apart eventually because people don't want to be around you. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have that much power, you might be able to get past that, but maybe not. Maybe there's a reckoning even then later. It just takes longer. It's not so much a reckoning of karma. It's that people don't want to be around an asshole. I mean, people like I call you an asshole all the time, Jason, but it's like, you know, it's like funny kind of asshole. It's not like you're a sociopathic asshole who's going to curse me for fucking stepping out of line. There are people like that. And like I said, you know, usually they curse the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
It's never who they would expect. Because, you know, you guys have met my cousin, you know, who's now deceased, right?
Yep.
Would you think she's someone you could curse? Probably, because she's open, outright. But then you saw what she could do. It probably wouldn't have been a good idea to curse her. And actually, the couple times we traveled to New Orleans, people realized that pretty quickly. Like, she's a very unassuming person. Like, you know, kind of like an old grandmother. Not really. When you guys met her, she wasn't really grandma-y, but you know what I'm saying. You know, like you just wouldn't think, oh, here's a person who will clean your clock, but she would have, right? And it's always like that. It's some people would say, well, that's karma you're describing, Andrieh. I'm like, it's not really. It is in the Eastern standard of karma. Like your actions have a consequence, and you can't really always predict what the consequence is. And eventually, people get overconfident. And that's the problem with curses. Like if you don't have your head on your shoulder, they give you this sense of power. And that is a lie because anyone could do them. Like it's an unearned sense of power, right? It's easy to do magic that hurts people. That's easy. That really truly is easy once you get the technologies down. Keeping your own self, I wouldn't say clean. I don't know. Help me out, Zach. What would you say? Not clean, but
keeping yourself balanced, actually, I think would be it.
It is balance. Yeah. It's balanced because the temptation of curse work and entropic magic is go all in. Right? Go all in. Hey, hell yeah. You got the power. You get rid of people. You put them in the hospital. Hail to the yes, right? Like, keep doing it, except, you know, what happens? Like, other areas of your life go to shit. You don't care because you're not balanced. You know, I don't really. I don't really actually ever see people. I mean, I've seen people who are demonologists be quite balanced, but never people who are openly throwing curses that much all the time. And once the balance starts to go out of whack, you know, things start to unravel in all ways they don't expect.
Oh, I hate to make a Star Wars analogy, but think about anybody who used the dark side in Star Wars movies, how it started to shift their way of thinking, shift their personality. When you're dealing with curse work, it's shifting your emotions, shifting your psychology. And if you don't have a way to step out of that, if you're immature about it, it's going to shift your whole persona to a negative. It's going to negatively affect you through your own personality shift.
Yeah.
It's definitely true that it'll start to shift your personality in ways that you don't expect. I mean, the Sith is a good example, except the Jedi Order, not exactly, as far as I'm concerned. If you leave the last movies out of the equation, the Jedi Order wasn't exactly flawless either. Like, let's deny your emotions and see how well that works out. You know, like, let's deny all your emotions and see how that works out. Now this is where we get back to a Taoist perspective again. And I think in a lot of ways, I saw this in practice with even chaos magic, right? People who only did shit like Cthulhu and demons all the time, they got effed up. And there are some people, and I will not name names, and you cannot force me to name names, you two, that found some ways around that, but they'll pay. And the way they did that is they spread it to their fans, and they will pay. It won't be me. It might be me, but it probably won't be me. Usually I only do anything when someone attacks me first, and then I don't have, literally I have no compulsion like about using far greater force, but eventually somebody will get upset. We're in a spiritual matrix with other spirits. And literally we saw that actually in Toronto too, where
I don't know how many times I've had to play Ghostbuster with mofos where I end up being the cleanup crew where I'm like, what just landed in my lap? Seriously.
It's not even that you're like, I get it. You know what? It's not even that you're like so morally opposed to what someone else is doing. It's literally like they are so fucking sloppy that fucks up things when you're trying to just do a basic acupuncture on someone and there's some attached asshole spirit trying to fuck you, and you're like, fuck you and fuck your master for being so sloppy, you jackasses. Right?
Yeah, I've seen that multiple times where I'm just like, all right, you guys are dicks.
Yeah, and all you want to do is do an acupuncture for someone. It's like,
I'm just here doing acupuncture. Let me do what I need to do. Stop making my job hard.
Yeah, it's how it is with me. Like, when I get a client, it's like, do I want to go on to an interdimensional conflict with some asshole group of other magicians? No. All I want to do is tell their spirit that's bugging this person to leave, usually. That's it. And if I can negotiate that, I'll just be like, can you please leave? But see, that's the thing about this. You start doing curses, you think you're untouchable. Nobody can touch you. Nobody can hurt you. Nobody can do anything to you because you got the power of black magic. Come on, that was supposed to, it should have been, I should have got some reaction from you guys.
The power of black magic is total.
Right, say that. Those of you who know the reference can. Oh my God! Oh! No! 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 Oh, my heart.
For those of you not seeing the video, I had to pull out the Donald Trump mask for a little bit of comic relief.
Or black magic.
Black.
By the way, I think we had some authors on the show I called it season 2. I called Al season 1. I called the rest of the show season 2. I called this season 3, with no determinate time frames on it. But we literally had John Greer on the show who basically said that. He didn't say Trump was black magic, but he did. If you think of marketing as black magic, I don't care what negative things you say about Trump. Trump is amazing at media manipulation.
Yes.
Say, nope, no, that's not true. He's a total idiot. And I'll say, yeah, listen to his speech and see if you don't get angry. You get angry. Anyone gets angry, either at people or at him. You can't do that without being a master at media. And while his speeches are not elegant, I would not consider them good speeches. If you listen to Hitler's speeches, they were similarly low. Everyone thinks Hitler was a great orator, but he wasn't. It's just because people fascination over Hitler, what he did. But if you listen to speeches in German, they're horrible. They sound just like Trump speeches, but they sound better because they're in German. And they sound like weird because they're in German.
German always adds an element.
Yeah, it's just like it sounds more aggressive, like "Ich liebe du," which is like "I love you," but in German it sounds like "I'm going to kill you," right? And his speeches sound that way because all the, when we're the English language, we're listening to German, even though they're close languages, it sounds more aggressive and passionate.
Yep.
He was saying almost exactly the same kind of shit. Like even his speeches were like, you should get angry about the Jews who are trying to take over. Like, we haven't heard anything like that ever, right? And the speech pattern's almost the same. Weird pauses to get you to throw your rational mind off, to then when you hear what he's saying, either you're already angry, and then you just redirect the anger at him. Because trust me, there was a whole resistance movement in Germany where people hated Hitler. If you study history, they hated him. And unfortunately for us in the United States, that was almost about the same level of people that hate Trump. And it was almost about the same level of people who support Trump supported Hitler. And it didn't actually make sense. But those speech patterns is definitely manipulation. And you can see that as kind of a sort of, if you think about it as more intentional work, it definitely is a sort of magic. And pastors use this too, right? Like, the speech can be magical when it's broadcast with intention.
Yes.
Which we covered in the shapeshifting class. Go to my website to see more details. How to actually break that down in a reasonable way, and then use it in maybe not reasonable ways. But I agree with Zolzan. Like, at least Hitler was multi-syllabic. But the reason Trump isn't, because that's the state of us in the States. 5th grade reading level is the average of the U.S. citizen.
Yes. He's not trying to be eloquent. He's not trying to use facts. He knows the statistics and the IQ of the average person he needs to win over to win votes.
Yep.
Yep.
This is not a smart society, folks.
So I fully think that is a type of, although you pulled it out in jest, I actually think that is a type of black magic. If you can whip people's emotions up and give them a simple answer, energetically, what is that? That's a binding. It really is. Especially if you get them to stop thinking. Those mental ideas, those viruses bind those people to an idea that isn't in their best interest, that eventually will cause them to self-destruct and could potentially do a lot more harm than is let on. Everyone thinks there's no harm in that, but I think we're seeing the harm, which we made fun of at the beginning of the show. People going out to the state houses with guns. People in the park ignoring things because they're like, oh, well, I hear this opposing view, or other occult authors with conspiracy theories that this is all just fake. Okay, sure. It's all just fake. I'm sure they think that way in New York City too, right? I mean, the thing is about this is like, that is a form of black magic. If you think about it in a form of energy, right? What's going to go on? Like, whether you're doing a binding of a person to not fire you or binding to an idea, the thing is still the same. It gets under the skin and then they lose themselves in the binding. You're either okay with that or you're not. If you care, that's honestly when you get in trouble. Like clearly, people who do this, like pastors, Trump, other people like that, they do not care what happens to the people. That this idea that they're binding through their rhetoric and through their energy they're putting out, they don't care what happens to those people. I mean, and that's why they won't have any consequences. Like if you do care, then you have to think about that. I think the analogy when we talked about this before, and it's doubly true, is if you wouldn't go up to a person with a baseball bat and hit them in the head with it, maybe you shouldn't do a curse. If you would, if the law, if it was outside of just because the law prevents you from doing that and the consequences, but you're fully okay with taking a baseball bat to their head if they threaten your family, you're probably in the right mindset to curse them then.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I don't think a lot of people that play around with this stuff really have that mentality, though.
No, I think a lot of people actually feel guilty about that. I think they curse people and they feel bad, and then bad stuff happens to them. But if you feel bad about what you've done, when you curse somebody, you're inviting the energy back into you because it has a mental channel back into your energy system because you're expressing regret, which is reconnecting with the original work, which is the opposite of fire and forget in sigil magic. It's the opposite of do this and not worry about it. It's literally like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have thought through that. And your subconscious mind goes, okay, let's think through that.
Mm-hmm.
Except the way that manifests is what is classically called karma. But it's not karma, it's your subconscious mind understanding that you have a doubt about your own actions. And when you have a doubt about your own actions, unless people think that curses can just be dark entropic, some of the worst curses I've thrown are with angels.
Yeah.
Although angels tend to have the law, actually, they tend to do what you ask them to do. It'll tell you no up front. That's been my experiences. Demons, some of the gods, they generally will do exactly what you say, depending on what the nature of the god is. Some gods will say no. Some demons will tell you that's not really in your best interest, which is shocking when people actually hear that. They'll actually tell you, like, that's probably a stupid idea. It's not a moral issue. This isn't going to turn out the way you think. I mean, we literally tried to do that a few weeks ago because we were trying to do an influence binding because Zach we need to keep the clinic open, right? So we were trying to do an influence binding on this other company. And Payman is the person we went to, and then we went to a couple other spirits. They all said, this is a really dumb idea. We don't like these people at all. Why did they say they didn't like these people? They said in the COVID reality, those people have no chance of surviving, so it's worthless magic. So don't waste your time. It wasn't a moral don't issue. It was I don't
gonna make it.
They're not going to make it. And literally, they're making decisions that we can see now.
Well, they've already made the decisions, and the writing's on the wall.
They're going to go out of business. The whole company's going out of business because they're not adapting to COVID. So the demon can see what we could not.
Oh, I've had the same experience where demons like, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's not the right time to do that. And when you find out why, holy crap, it's like, that's when you know you're really talking to a real entity.
Well, real,
Oh, okay.
For another show.
That's another debate, but yeah.
We could have that discussion endlessly.
Let's just say unforeseen knowledge is happening.
I think bindings are probably the way. We've been talking mostly about bindings. I think that's the most obvious because the energy of constraint is obvious. When we start talking about sickness spells, you better be sure of yourself. Like, Not sure that you can do it, but sure that you're okay with it. And they had better have wronged you enough that you're okay with it. That sounds weird, but sickness has a weird tendency to get out of control. Like, you might think cursing someone with COVID is a good idea and then they die. Are you okay with that? Like, you can't really control sickness once it gets into a person's system, you know? Just like you could curse somebody to die and then they do. Are you okay with that? I mean, that's the first curse people usually reach for. Let's get the death curse. It's okay. What could possibly happen? First of all, living is usually much more of a punishment than dying, especially if you're using curses like madness or some form of mental break. That is usually far more painful if you're that pissed off about something. Second of all, death curses are notoriously hard, and I don't care what other people say like about this. They've never tried one. When you do one, they're notoriously hard, and they're hard because you usually can get these kind of curses against another people and get it to actually sink in. With death curse, unless a person's already suicidal, they're going to magically fight back, right? It's like their spirit is going to fight back unless you can lull them into wanting to die. So it's like the death curse actually is unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, wouldn't you say that's true, Jason?
Absolutely.
It's like their life could go to shit before they die. That wasn't your intention, right? You're just trying to move them out of the way. But everything has to go to hell before they'll accept that fate.
I will say this much. I did a curse on someone once. They did not die. They did shoot themselves in the titty and go insane and wind up in a mental hospital for a while, but they didn't die.
Unpredictable. That wasn't your intent, right? Your intent was...
Yeah.
You said that on air, man. It's live. You've been recorded. You're a black magician now. The thought police are going to arrest you. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Jeffrey's right. No, shoot titties, man. God, what are you doing? Intention. You know, so usually, like, you know, one of the worst curses that you could do for somebody right now? Discord.
Oh.
Discord has far more subtle effects than people think.
Now, you have to be a little more specific what you mean by discord, because a lot of our lives are in kind of discord right now.
Not yours.
True.
Recent events.
Mm-hmm.
But think about it. Discord can be anything. It could be job Discord. If you really need someone out of the way, you don't have to get them fired to get them out of your way. They just have to have other problems. That's what Discord brings. It's like, usually if I'm going to target someone on Discord, it's to basically remove them in a way that they have something else to deal with. And usually social connections are far, far, far weaker than anyone would like to believe. And everyone like to think their friends will be there no matter what. If you perfectly are cynical, you probably don't believe that. And honestly, on my real friends, of which you two are included, obviously, I know there's probably nothing that we could do to each other that I would be like, fuck you. You know, on my pseudo friends, however, it wouldn't take much for me to say, fuck you. By pseudo friends, I mean associates.
You mean your enemies?
Probably mostly frenemies, actually, at least in the public sphere. Yeah, but sure, we'll just say frenemies. We'll leave it at that. But on the flip side of that, like, wouldn't take much, right? Wouldn't take much. And if you need someone out of the way, ask Harris.
Yeah.
They'll have other things to do. Not joking. You don't have to do anything else. They'll be preoccupied if they're causing problems for you. I mean, you can light a little fire to boost that up. You put some herbs in there that have discord properties in there, but really, that's it. That's the same as a souring spell in Conjure, where you just basically put someone's name in vinegar, shake it up, or put two people's name in vinegar, really put the energy in there, and there you go. That's a simple old school Conjure thing. Simple jar spell. You'll be able to get them to fight. And oftentimes that takes very little energy. So if you need people to fight so that way you can get promoted, there's some ideas, right? But you got to be okay with that, because it's, again, this goes back to like the other thing we said. Can you really predict what's going to happen from that? Maybe, maybe not. You know, it could go way more than you expect real fast. Like all of a sudden they get fired, or, you know, they're getting a divorce, or, you know, are you okay with that? A lot of times the answer might be, you don't care. You got what you want, right? But that's still done the same thing as you have to invite discord in to your house, your house being your body, and be okay with it and laugh with it, and then not get freaked out by it. Realizing that peace and discord are the same thing from a Taoist point of view, or from a chaos point of view, or from whatever point of view. They're merely experiences that are equally valid. And the sensory input of those experiences are simply your reaction to those experiences. And if you view them as such, then you can use that. And sometimes you can, I think there was one thing about, so can we bind or curse the memes directly? Maybe, but you certainly can use a discord with politicians. Republicans fight all the time, right? Pastors fight and split all the time. The churches split all the time. Discord, it's very hard for us to actually, as social animals, not have discord. Take it for what it's worth. Now that's more local magic. That's more localized, smaller steps. But, you know, if you're going to go make actual change that you can see, this is probably more meaningful how you can use this in a productive way. If you think that that's not already going on, you can see what happens, right? Like, even in groups that should be aligned, do they get along? So this is another technique that's very useful, but it's like a wildfire. That's the problem with most of the curse work, is you can't really, you can get your outcome, but then you can do a lot more damage than you intended. And unless you're really all into Nietzsche, and you're really at this stage where you're beyond good and evil, because you're so far into magic that you see yourself as a force of nature, it's hard not to get affected by that. Now, I think some of us are at that place where we're almost see ourselves as shamans who are outside of the human order in a lot of ways. That not necessarily mean we're going to do whatever we want. And I don't think that's what it means. I think it means that we wouldn't have guilt over something we think is necessary. At least for me, I wouldn't directly react either. I would think about it. I'll try to calm down if I get angry, and then try to think, is this the right course of action? Is it the right course of action, not just for me, but for my family? In some cases, it's the right course of action for my friends. By the way, I have done, as Zach and Jason knows, like, people bug them. Sometimes I'll step in, and I'd say I get pretty good results on that.
That you do. You get excellent results. And I think all of us have had those conversations with each other, and or when we get certain situations where we look at that.
There's times where I'll be like, I definitely think this person needs cursed, and I definitely don't think I could detach from it. Like, to be able to do this correctly. Like, I just don't, it's not going to happen. If I try, nope. I'll be like, okay, somebody else, can you handle this for me? Can you handle this for me? Because I can't get around the issue, right? Like, I can't invite the negativity that this person causes me into the door and laugh with it. But that's negativity they cause to me that doesn't have the right shape for someone else. I think that's a good analogy. So it's 8:56. So, few things. Next week's show is going to be about how to create magical space without space. As in how to create magical space when you're confined with however many other people in the same space, so you can't actually necessarily do what you need to do. We're going to go over some tools and stuff like that. In the second hour, we'll kind of open the floor for people to just kind of take a look at their different spaces that they want to share and go over some real techniques that have worked, not just astral techniques that we've actually done in practice, to actually make that space issue work, despite not having the classical 9-foot circle in their basement or stuff like that, which is, you don't need any of that. There's workarounds, and we'll go over that next week. So to keep people doing you can keep doing magic even if you're stuck in a whole bunch of space. You know, that includes how to vocalize without vocalizing so people can't get offended if you're in close proximity, stuff like that. So we'll cover that. Probably some of the practical techniques in the second half of the show for the sponsors. For the first half, we'll cover some details like we did in this show. For people who are sponsors, we're actually going to go, we'll show you right now. We have an altar set up. We're going to do some actual work with you. So that'll be great. For today, if you would like to become a sponsor in the next 5 minutes, I know that's a bad marketing thing. 5 minutes, come a sponsor. Zach just pushed out the thing. Become a sponsor. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then go into actual magical work. If you're a sponsor in 5 minutes, just tell us, well, what's that about?
Isn't it true that anyone who becomes a sponsor gets access to all past shows as well?
Correct. They will be on the Teachable. The recordings will be there. So if you become a sponsor in the next 5 minutes, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we're going to just jam a little. If you're not a sponsor, this is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole. We thank you. That's the free part of the show. So we have a list of sponsors. And if you have any questions about today's show, go ahead and ask in the chat right now. We'll be here for a few minutes. We're going to take a 5-minute break to let people go become sponsors. But then you can see, here we go. And we're going to actually do some work today in the second part of the show. I got it set up right there so we can use the magic of the energy of terror for magical purposes. And we're going to go through some practical stuff between the three of us. So, mainly I am, and people are going to ask me questions. Oh yeah, this candle holder, as soon as Wu Zhen opens again, we're going to have these in stock, Jeffrey. So
yep, we'll get things in stock.
Because they can keep almost every candle from, if they break, it will keep it from setting your house on fire.
Safety.
Purpose.
Important.
Yeah. That's the purpose. It's a double wall. So this one has a double wall. It's got an outer one, and then 7-day goes in there, and it's pretty much the safest possible thing. If it breaks both walls, it's not going to break the steel grilled, the aluminum grid around it. So, it's pretty safe for using candles indoors then. Probably as safe as you can get. For the people who are going to be here for the second part of the show, if you can get a yellow or black candle, that'd be really helpful. If you can get a piece of paper, that'd be really helpful. If you can get some salt, that would also be helpful. Maybe a dish, that'd be helpful. That's it. That's all you would probably need. There's other things we can add to this to augment it, but for the core of what we're going to cover, that should do it. I'm going to go back to my Facebook. Anyone have questions? Thank you all for everyone who came to the free section. Thank you for coming.